Hello everybody and welcome to another video of ASAP Physics. In this video, we would be covering the derivatives of anti-trigonometry, also known as inverse trig. So as you can see here, these are the formulas for the inverse trig functions. So as I mean formula here, what I'm saying is the derivative. So let's first go in order. So the derivative of sine to the power of negative 1 x, according to this formula, states that it is equal to 1 over square root of 1 minus x squared, and x cannot equal to plus or minus 1 because that gives it an undefined denominator, making this expression kind of like undefined and hard to work with. So what is this x now? Well, this x is exactly what's there that is substituted for x in the first expression. So let's do a practice problem regarding the inverse sine function and finding its derivative. So let's take the function. Let's take the function sine inverse of 4x. Well, in order to do this, first we would look at the formula, and when you have an upcoming test or whenever you're preparing for the AP exam, the best thing is to memorize these set of formulas, as these are one set of formulas that is really important to memorize for the AP exam that comes in May. So yeah, let's continue with the problem. So sine inverse of 4x, So let's write our formula. 1 over square root of 1 minus, so we're finding the derivative of this function. So 1 minus, now 4x, the whole squared is nothing but 16x squared. Now we have one problem with this question. We're not done yet. This is because we need to find the derivative of the inside of the parentheses. If you remember the chain rule from the earlier videos. So as a result, using the power rule, the derivative of 4x is just 4. So that goes actually in the numerator. And that is basically because you're multiplying by 4 due to the chain rule that is present in this problem. So the final answer for this problem is 4 over 1 minus 16x the whole squared. So that square root is the whole thing for that. So now let's change this problem a little. Now what if this problem was cosine inverse? Well, if it was cosine inverse, then the biggest difference, as we can look in our formula table, is that the answer would be a negative 4 over square root of 1 minus 16x squared. That is the difference between a sine inverse and a cosine inverse. So that is just a small thing to note. Moving on, we get to tan inverse. The tan inverse is kind of simple, as there's not much, you don't need to deal with a square root, and it's just 1 over 1 plus x squared. So we can do a quick practice problem on that. Let's say we have tan of 4x once again, tan inverse of 4x, and we need to find the derivative of this function. That is nothing but 1. Okay, once again, let's try to involve this as we solve the problem. So since we know the chain rule, the derivative of 4x is just 4 over tan inverse. Tan inverse formula states 1 plus x squared. Now 4x the whole squared is nothing but 16x squared. So this is our answer. So that's how fast the problem should be solved in a test, as most of the calculus tests that are given throughout the year are timed. Cotangent. A cotangent is actually the same thing, except this time it would be negative 1 over 1 plus x squared. Same formula. So that's good. It's the same scenario with the cosine. You just add a negative sign in front of in the formula that you would use for tan inverse. Now, finally, a little more complicated problem is the secant inverse. So the derivative of secant inverse states from the formula table, we know that it is 1 over absolute value of x times square root of x squared minus 1. Be careful, that order is super important. It's absolute value of x times square root of x squared minus 1. So in order to do that, let's do a practice problem. So if we do a practice problem, the way it would go is we have d over dx. So let's use the same problem, but this time secant inverse of 4x. And when we do 4x, we're going to first use the formula. The formula states it's, okay, so again, once again, we need to use the chain rule. So 4x power rule is just 4 over absolute value of x is just, so the x in this scenario, the whole thing in there, right? So that's just going to be 4x, so absolute value of 4x, we'll write it with the absolute value, square root of x squared, so this is where it's going to be 16x squared minus 1. You don't need to really simplify this unless you see something, but usually teachers don't prefer you to simplify it. Even in the AP exam, you don't need to simplify it in the free response sections. But yeah, the answer for this is 4 over 4x, the absolute value of 4 absolute value 4x times 16x squared, the square root of 16x squared minus 1. So if this, however, was a cosecant problem, as we have seen in previous problems, we would just add a negative sign. So this chart is really important to memorize, as it will become crucial in upcoming calculus tests and, most importantly, the AP exam. Thank you for listening to this video on inverse trig derivatives, and hope you learned something new.